The marathon show for 2 hours. Whew, here we go. So Trey Lance, now it's becoming more and more likely that Garoppolo stays. Do I have to start like projecting in Garoppolo? Maybe, but they've talked about being fully committed to Trey Lance. And the similar argument to Jalen Hurts last year, QB6 with pretty mediocre passing numbers. I see 713 and 7 on the ground. That's enough to leap Lance into my top 12 in my projections. And then you mix in the fact that he's got some tasty weapons to throw to as well. We hyped this guy up as a league winner last year. He didn't really get the chance to show us that. But by all accounts, this offseason, he is commanding the huddle. He is looking phenomenal in practice. He is the next big thing coming out of camp right now. He could be that cheat code this year. So I am interested in getting Trey Lance. I would love this year. I was too risky last year where I would go like Trey Lance and Ryan Fitzpatrick in best ball. And then Fitzpatrick got hurt. It was just a mess. I would like to go Stafford, Trey Lance. Like that would be a beautiful combination to me to have a locked-in ace and then have the league-winning upside of Trey Lance to balance it out. But I am a big fan largely because of that Konami upside. Even only throwing 21 touchdowns, which might be a little too low with the weapons he has, he still came out in my top 12 because of that rushing upside. So huge Konami upside there. Now, in terms of like, the pies, a very dead even 50-50 split. That's kind of been the whole Shanahan rub. It's been a little bit more pass than rush, like, 52 and 48. I think with Trey Lance and adding those carries, we're going to get closer to a 50-50 split, a little more time being bled. So minus 27. Running back wise, I do have Eli Mitchell still soaking in the vast majority, 43% of the work. But Trey Lance getting 24% can't be just completely ignored when you're projecting out Eli Mitchell. In fact, his 3 worst games of last year came when Trey Lance was at QB. One of them he did score a receiving touchdown, so it ended up being okay. But like 2 pretty mediocre efforts with Trey Lance at QB. So you got to keep that in mind. I do think he'll be okay, but we also haven't had a 49ers running back repeat as the team's highest scorer, I think, in like 7 years. So you got to keep that in mind as well. They did draft Tyrion Davis-Price. I like always just throwing a dart at a Kyle Shanahan backfield. As you can see, a decent amount of volume, and that zone blocking scheme is just always so gorgeous. So like I've been doing a lot of, round 13 or so, Tyrion Davis-Price. If he got 97 carries, I think he could turn that into 5 touchdowns and 417 yards is what I have him projected at. But his real upsides if something happens to Mitchell, and we saw Mitchell miss 3-ish games last year. So I think he's the natural handcuff. Of course, maybe he's the next Trey Sermon. He just does nothing. You never know. Jeff Wilson's reportedly looking really good at camp. I can't go back to the Jeff Wilson show.
Mitchell's
you're back, Drew. I didn't know if you were back or not yet. So
Mitchell's another of these guys that you just like. You got him projected running back 29, but you like him at running back 22 on the big board. It's just like you got your guys you just kind of like a little more. And I feel the same way about Mitchell.
And that's how you got to do it, right? And Mitchell, it's like I do like the guy, so I'm not sitting here saying I don't like him. I just have always been a sucker for the Kyle Shanahan backfield. Like it's just sexy to me.
But also, you see Mitchell on the field. That guy passes the eye test.
He does. Oh yeah. He's a tough little prick too. Like playing hurt, but like balling out still.
He is a tough little prick.
I really like him. And I don't know if our man is still with us that was asking about Debo Samuel, but 120 targets, so still a decent amount there. I do think the catch rate goes down a little bit when you're playing with Trey Lance instead of him. But as I mentioned, he did have 2 touchdowns in the 3 games together. So maybe the 5 touchdowns is a little low because he did come out, Debo, significantly lower than I expected. I actually, you know what? I know that's too low. So I'm just gonna bump that up like now. I think he gets to at least 8. So 9%, 7. I'll call it that. A couple. This is where I do think Debo takes a big hit though. He saw what was it last year? I think like 80 carries, and he averaged like 9 yards a clip. Still, he's insane. He's already talked about how he doesn't want to be a running back anymore. He just wants to be treated as a strict receiver. That's why he's holding out. He wants to be traded to a team that will use him that way, or at least he wants the 49ers to. So 41 rushes still might be a little too generous. He's certainly not going to see the double of that he saw last year. And that's going to take a little bit of a ding on his stats. Like he had some good receiving games, of course, but a lot of his production came as a nice red zone weapon out of the backfield. So I am in, this could be That's why he's projecting out pretty bad, is the hit I'm giving him in his rushing totals. And that's kind of fallen through. I couldn't believe how low Ayuk ended up coming out. I guess I just don't think this aerial pie, 392 and 23 touchdowns, there's not a ton of meat for two receivers to have monster seasons there. And as much as I loved Ayuk as a rookie, I had him that year. He was the wide receiver 3 behind only Adams and Tyreek for a stretch of that season. We saw a huge game upside. Then we saw last year he didn't even start on his own team for like half the season.
I mean, that was about the worst 7-game stretch you've just about ever seen anybody have.
And nobody reported it like in camp. How did we have no idea that Brandon Ayuk? Everybody was clamoring about this guy being the next big breakout, and then he didn't start, like Trent Sherfield.
And some games that he started, he didn't get it, or some game when he played would not get a target.
Yeah, in Trey Lance's games, he did not play well. He did not get very many targets. So I am nervous about him. I'm significantly lower in my projections than I probably have him ranked, and I think I need to bump him down my rankings because that's one that's I don't feel horrible about being low on him. Especially because they're saying Juwan Jennings is outplaying him right now already in minicamp and having the best, offseason of his career. And I like Juwan Jennings. Anytime he got burned last year, he did some damage with it. So I'm out on Ayuk. I am not into Ayuk as a guy that was an Ayuk guy coming into last year. And then George Kittle is George Kittle. But I do think it hurts to have Trey Lance again. I think it kind of hurts everybody's fantasy prospects, including the running game, other than Trey Lance himself, who has cheat code upside. I think everybody gets down a bit, but Trey Lance himself could win you your league. That's kind of how I summarize this team.
How old is George Kittle?
I think he's getting maybe 29, 28, 29.
He seems older.
He might be younger than that, though.
He seems older than that to me, but I don't think he is. I think you're right.
He's only played 5 years or so. I
think that's correct. I mean, I think he's 27, but to me, it seems like he's 34.
And it was, again, only a 2-game sample size, so you never want to overreact to that. But Kittle was not targeted at all. I think he had 5 combined targets in 2 games with Trey Lance. So again, you don't extrapolate that and say this is what's going to happen with Kittle now, but it's just something to keep in mind that the whole passing game here, I think, is going to take a decent hit. And Trey Lance himself will benefit from all the runs that he's going to now get. But the aerial pie is a little bit less intriguing with Trey Lance at the helm. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.